Sekeres and Price for Thursday, May 14th, 2026. We're a presentation of Bet365. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3 goals, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app, get playing today, and of course, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Matt Sekeres alongside virtually Blake Price, who remains in Minnesota after his MLS duties last night. Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things on what could very well be a seminal day for the Vancouver Canucks as a new leadership team is introduced, and they are, of course, all 3 familiar faces. We have just finished at Rogers Arena, where Henrik and Daniel Sedin, arguably the 2 best players in Vancouver Canucks history, for me, inarguably the 2 best careers in Vancouver Canucks history, have been named the co-presidents of the club. Don't often see co-presidents. And Ryan Johnson, a former player and, of course, longtime executive at Canucks Sports Entertainment, is named the 13th general manager of the club. Our daily poll question today: did you like what you heard from the Canucks' new front office? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price, first kick at this can.
I mean, honestly, it was an almost flawless performance. I think any quibble you might be able to manufacture, I think, could be debated. I think they pretty much touched them all. You can have impatience maybe that they didn't have more thorough answers on the AGM and head coaching positions, but I think their answers were reasonable there and their timeline's reasonable as well. So succinctly, and it's a pretty succinct question, I think the answer for me is yes here, Matt.
Honestly, Blake, I sat there and I listened to it, and it was darn near 45 minutes entirely, in its entirety. It was, if I'm not mistaken, 26 questions that came from the floor, as well as opening statements from the 3 gentlemen and team owner and chairman Francesco Aquilini. And I cannot remember the last time I have heard a Canucks news conference with that much said over that period of time where I didn't find myself shaking my head once. So already I think club messaging has improved and improved to a large measure. Of course, it helps when you hire people of this quality who have a long-standing relationship with the fans and citizens of British Columbia and who are so respected, in the case of the Twins, revered, and known as people of character and integrity. We could be talking about Thursday, May 14th, 2025, several years down the road, as the day where it all changed and where this great community asset got back on track in terms of being something that British Columbians and Canucks fans are proud of. So it's an authoritative, Well, the community part too.
Mentioned there at the end too, and we're going to get into that.
We will get to that.
But I do want to say this: if you have any, there might be an inadvertent negative to this press conference, and I am 100% certain this was not intended by the 3 gentlemen up there. But Matt, in the answers that they gave today, and this was not intentional by them in any way, shape, or form. I can be 100% in this. They blasted the last administration, like by talking about how the community stuff had fallen by the wayside, by talking about the culture in the room needing to improve, by talking about a lot of the things that needed to improve. Unwittingly, the last administration was shown to be lacking in all those facets, and they were good answers. They were honest answers, but it just confirms most of the stuff that we all suspected and reported on up until this point.
Right. Well, a couple of things there. Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin, and Rick Tocchet were mercenaries. They were on an NHL journey, and Vancouver was their next stop. In some cases, I don't blame them for that because they had such a large lift in trying to take this organization out of the doldrums. They had a massive, massive project on their hand on the hockey side of things. They had incredible challenges above them in dealing with this ownership group, which, as we know, is much different than just about every other ownership group out there. Remember, Jim Rutherford didn't go through the Tom Dundon experience. He went through the previous owner, and that was a big job in his own right. But I think for others, the rank and file, and particularly what were a couple of rookie AGMs and a rookie GM with Patrick Allvin, just actually doing the job was a big enough challenge as it was. To have the sort of maintenance that was required on high, then, of course, all the things that happened in the room with those players, I think made it extraordinarily difficult for them to do all the other sorts of things like community involvement that we had become accustomed to with this franchise under the stewardships of Pat Quinn and Brian Burke and Dave Nonis and Mike Gillis and Trevor Linden. I also know, because Rutherford said it to a lot of people around the league, he didn't particularly like living here. He would tell people his wife and son absolutely loved Vancouver, but I don't think Jim Rutherford liked living here. And Farhan Lalji reported yesterday he cleaned out his office, and I think the accelerated timeline that they talked about today of Rutherford leaving the organization is evidence of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to some of the matters at hand here. And honestly, there wasn't any... I'm not sure there was anything that struck me in the face where I was gobsmacked or dumbfounded, but the opening statement from Daniel Sedin and partner, I don't know about you, I was very proud. They sat down and I went, that's Daniel in the middle. I still can tell them apart. Yeah. Now, I did have to double check with someone because, you never can be too sure, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Daniel in the middle and that's Hank on the left. But the opening statement of Daniel Sedin, which effectively serves as a mission statement for this new administration. I want to play what Daniel had to say about that, because talking about values, talking about cornerstones, and the 3 words they'll live by, and if I'm not mistaken, have you tweeted this should be their slogan? Let's hear from... Was that what you suggested should be their...
It was a Henrik quote later on.
Okay. Yeah. Here's Daniel Sedin on 3 words they'll live by.
Every successful team we've been a part of had values, cornerstones that could answer one question. Why are we here and what do we stand for? 3 words that we will live by: connected, committed, and purpose. We want to reestablish the connection from top to bottom within this organization, but also in the community, to this fan base, and to the city of Vancouver and the province of BC. And we have a clear vision that will connect us to be sustainable winning culture.
Now, you hear that, and it sounds very good, but for a cynic, it could just be an empty slogan for a new boss taken on over, right? Okay, this is what you're saying, but proof is in the pudding. We'll see if you live by it. And of course, there are challenges from on high with this organization and this owner who has, for the better part of a decade, shown himself as someone who requires immediate gratification, who does not have the patience for a rebuild. And yet, Blake, and I don't think this should go without not only mentioning, but underlining in large font, Francesco Aquilini used the word rebuild today. He talked about a rebuild being underway and the people he's hiring to see it through. Let's hear. Aquilini did not take questions, but he did provide the opening statement. Let's hear from Francesco using the word rebuild.
Jim had an immediate impact, leading the team to within one game of the conference finals. And while that trajectory changed due to unexpected personnel challenges, Jim leaves us with a roster of promising young players and numerous draft picks. The rebuild is underway. I'd also like to thank Patrick Alvin. Patrick is a terrific person, and we appreciate all his efforts here. And we wish him the best on his future moves. Most importantly, I want to say thanks to our loyal fans who supported the Canucks through a very difficult season. I share in your disappointment. We expect to be better, need to be better, and we will be better.
We will be better. I mean, there's one take. It would be hard to be worse. Yeah. It would be hard to be worse. But he used the word rebuild there, Blake. He used it twice earlier in his opening statement. So I would like to think and hope and believe that we do have an ownership group that is committed to this long-term rebuild that both Sedins and Ryan Johnston talked about today.
Small tidbit on ownership before we move on here. David Quadrelli asked about the availability of Francesco before the presser began, and Canucks spokespeople said to him, sooner rather than later, we'll get the chance to talk to Francesco. I mean, no more context than that, but very interesting.
Well, I have heard some rumblings on that file, and I'm poking around, and we'll see if we can dig anything up there. But I think I might know what he's alluding to there. Okay, let's talk rebuild here, and let's talk it with the new and 13th general manager in Vancouver Canucks history, Ryan Johnston. I know you want to hear from Hank on this as well, Blake, but let's start with Ryan Johnston, the new GM. He'll be executing the day-to-day on the timeline of a rebuild.
I think to put any type of timeline on it is unfair to the process. I think it's more about building the environment first, is making sure that the staples are there, the things that we believe in, creating an environment a safe environment where players can improve, can make mistakes, that have resources, but we're going to do this step by step, and we're not going to race through it. We're going to be very strategic with everything we do. We're going to be aligned with everything we do, so that we know, as a group, we are sticking to the vision that was talked about in May of 2026, and not ever get outside of that vision. And I think if we stick to that, we do it correctly, and we have the right people, the right leadership, and the right environment here consistently every day. There's no doubt in our minds that we will take the steps to get to where we want to go.
Big environment culture guy today, and community was RJ, right? Talking about what he wanted to, like, he addressed the rebuild, but immediately Matt wanted to take that answer and again pound those key words about community, environment, safety for the player. Like, man, they had that on their brain big time today.
Yep, they did. This is our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Daniel and Henrik Sedin, co-presidents of the Vancouver Canucks and Canucks Sport, co-presidents of hockey operations, we should say, for the Vancouver Canucks and Canucks Sports Entertainment. Ryan Johnston, the 13th general manager in Canucks history. Look, there were some massive topics that I think needed to be addressed here. They were light on particulars. You have mentioned that, Blake, and I concur, and I can understand if there were some people who were looking for some more specifics on certain things. We'll get into head coach in a bit. We'll get into the rest of the front office in a bit. We'll get into Elias Pettersson in a bit. But right now we're talking rebuild, and Henrik Sedin, as you say, they drew very little distinction between this rebuild, culture, community, connectedness.
All rolled into one.
Yeah, like a falafel. You got a lot of things there under the pita. Let's hear from Henrik Sedin on culture.
Well, there's going to, and Ryan is a big part of that too. We got to show up every day and lead by example. Culture is huge. You cannot win without it. That's impossible, and you cannot be sustainable without it. I think you'll see when this moves on and there's a process to everything, and you build something good. You will win a lot of the trades you make, and you will bring in free agents that are overperforming where they maybe you expect. So for us, the culture piece is our main thing to fall back on over the next little bit there. That's starting with us. We got to come in every day, and we got to show up, and we got to do the things that took us to this position, and that's same as players. Preparation, and that gives us confidence that we can step into this role. Is that we are prepared, and we're going to do everything it takes to do this job well. And I think it has a trickle down effect when if we can show that.
I thought it was interesting that Hank got to the specificity that he did, that you'll win trades when you have culture, that you can bring players in who perform better in your organization if you have proper culture than they did elsewhere. Like I think back to the last great Canucks teams, right? The acquisitions of Chris Higgins and Max Lapierre and Christian Ehrhoff, and what they gave the Vancouver Canucks compared to what they were giving their existing teams. Now, didn't always work out. You know, Keith Ballard, David Booth, Derek Roy. There were some others who were brought in to a good culture and didn't quite succeed as the others have. But also on the free agent side, and there's some great examples there with the Vancouver Canucks of that era. What Michael Samuelsson gave them, what Manny Malhotra gave them, what Dan Hamhuis gave them. Guys who were brought in as free agents and excelled here with a good Canucks team that had good culture. So I thought it was quite thoughtful of Henrik to link those sorts of things, those two things together, about players being able to flourish in a better culture. Okay, draft picks. They have 10 of them this year. As we have talked about, the Vancouver Canucks have not been a busy team at the draft table for an awfully long time, despite being a poor team. They haven't amassed draft picks. They haven't amassed high picks. This is the first time in Canucks history, as it stands now, that they go into a draft with multiple first-round picks and multiple second-round picks. Was this Ryan Johnson? Yes, Ryan Johnson talking about building through the draft.
Yeah, well, there's only so many players, right? And cap going up, it's not the days of cap crunch teams. Now there's money to spend. There's only so many players. So that is where our vision is, to build through the draft. Obviously, we've got 10 picks right now in this year's draft, just finishing our amateur meetings. Those are going to be massive selections in this process. But will there be things we'll do strategically to add to our draft pool? Absolutely. And that's stuff that we will talk about. But we want to do it right. We want to, provide a group that's here that we kind of believe in, with the right people around them, make sure our environment is sharp, and our environment is actually where, because if we get away from that at any point, then we're off our vision. And that's one thing. Everything that we will do will be talked about, we will be aligned, and we will move forward. We will not shoot off the hip or get away from that at any point. And I think if we're consistent with that, we've got a good opportunity to step by step to get to where we want to be.
I thought that was
culture wrapped up into everything, Matt. And I think people immediately go, okay, Jake DeBrusk. They're trading Jake DeBrusk for more draft picks. But he's also talking about culture and having the right people around her. And Jake DeBrusk is a great guy to have around. Now, if Jake doesn't want to be here, that's a different thing altogether, if he demands to get out in some way, shape, or form. But I think he is committing. Don't you think? Didn't you read that we're going to trade guys away for draft picks?
A little bit, but if I can just parse that answer, the second part about wanting to amass draft picks and build through the draft, I'm sure resonated with Canucks fans, particularly the tankists, the rebuildists, those who have been asking for this for the better part of 12 years. And the third part about that answer, about which I think is what you're addressing there, taking veterans and moving them and doing this the proper way, not shooting from the hip, staying within the guardrails, I think is also important and will resonate with Canucks fans. But it's the first part of the answer there that tells me that Ryan Johnston is thinking about this in the correct way. And granted, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was a question from Harm Dial of Canucks Conversation in The Athletic, who is, of course, such a sharp guy in his own right. But RJ saying, like, look, the world has changed here with this rising cap. It is a different environment in terms of how you go about team building. Everybody has cap space. Okay, there may be some teams that are on budgets and can't spend to the ceiling, but amassing talent is going to be more difficult on the free agent market. Amassing talent is going to be more difficult on the trade market because teams aren't going to be forced into situations where they have to move guys. You think back to the Edmonton Oilers a couple of years ago, Blake. They had to trade out 2 Indigenous first-round draft picks of theirs, Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, because they couldn't afford to keep them in a flat cap environment. Those days are gone. And so RJ articulating that, it also tells me that he was able to explain that and have that root in the mind of Francesco Aquilini. That ownership understands that too. Because RJ talking about it like that, if ownership thought there were still fast tracks available to them, I don't think RJ gets the job. But it sounds to me like there has been a full and hearty discussion amongst those 3 gentlemen and ownership. And I would have to think that Evan Gold, the runner-up for this job, parroted the same thing, is that, look, team building has completely been flipped here. You cannot take advantage of some of the levers that you were able to take advantage of when it was a flat cap environment, when you had so many teams that were year-to-year cap crunched and that bled players into the system and made them available on the trade or free agent market. So I thought that was an extraordinarily important answer from Ryan Johnston. And I love the way that he began it, and I love the way how he couched it at the end with having to stay disciplined to that notion. Okay.
What you're saying, though, also should drive Canucks fans up the wall, because wouldn't it be great if the Canucks had been amassing draft picks for the last few years?
Absolutely.
And they were graduating ELC players right now, and being able to extend them and all that, like planting the orchard rule, right? Should have been planted a long time ago.
Yeah. And to take an example of, what we were talking about, I think maybe the best example is Sean Monahan. Like Sean Monahan, who, of course, once upon a time a first-line center of the Calgary Flames. He's injured. He's diminishing as a player. The Montreal Canadiens acquire him and a first-round draft pick from a cap-crunched Calgary Flames team. They put Sean Monahan in their lineup because they're rebuilding and doesn't really matter. Yep. And then they turn around and they trade Sean Monahan for a first and a conditional 3rd round pick. They got 2 first-round picks out of a diminishing Sean Monahan because of his cap hit, because they were able to take on the cap hit, rehabilitate the player, and then move him on again. Those scenarios aren't happening. Those scenarios aren't available to the Vancouver Canucks or any rebuilding team at this point. So it's going to make it more difficult. It's going to mean a longer, more patient road, I think, in a rebuild these days than it was in that era. But I think that Ryan Johnston saying what he said about the rebuild tells me he is acutely aware of that. And I think that's such an important part of this.
But I think the trade market for good players, for veteran players that remain on this Canuck roster, because people know that the free agent market sucks so badly right now, I think that you might be able to extract value for trades now, and then add to your draft picks, add to the pool, and grow your own players.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I still think the model that Kyle Dubas used years ago with the Toronto Maple Leafs You're signing mid-level veterans in free agency to short-term deals. You're moving them on at the trade deadline for draft picks. I think some of those examples and mechanisms are still going to be available to you. It's just the reaping huge bounties from cap-crunched teams to take on bad money. I don't think that is going to be as readily available, and it means that the Canucks and Ryan Johnston, the Sedins, are going to have to do it differently. Okay, standing by, let's bring in one of our favorite guests here on Sekeres and Price, columnist with the Province, the Sun, and Post Media, Mr. Patrick Johnston, who is in attendance today and asked a number of good questions, including the practice facility one at the end, and very well phrased, sir.
Cheeky.
Thank you for the time and opportunity. Paige, what struck you of everything you heard today?
Well, a reminder of what these guys are like, just personable, reasonable to talk to, convinced of what they do. And so you sit back and you go, yeah, listen, these guys have a chance, but it comes down to, are they given space to work, and do they have the right personnel? And, I think we know that they are. I mean, Ryan talks about himself. I appreciate his answer, but I perceived as being empathetic. Therefore, people think I can't make tough calls. I thought that was a great answer, saying, believe me, I do make tough calls. That they are more than, I think people, I mean, it's funny. It's hard to think of them being more than having an impression of two Hall of Famers, but that they are more than what people have an impression of. We are now going to see them up front and close about how they operate and what they do, because all three for the last decade have been not, I guess 2018, but you know what I mean? For the better part of the last decade, all three have been behind the scenes and not terribly visible, even if we know they've been around. And so they certainly are presentable. They are smart guys. Now it's, can they actually do the job? And that's going to be tough for anybody, no matter who they are.
You mentioned the cutthroat piece. Let's play that clip right now, Mike, because we know Ryan Johnston is a nice guy. We know he's not ill-tempered or anything like that. He's not a pound the fist. He's kind of the antithesis of the blustery pound the fist Brian Burke that some Canucks fans may remember. And that led to what I thought was a very good question. RJ, are you cutthroat enough? Here's the new Canucks
I think
GM.
it's a little bit of a false narrative of the people that work directly with me in contact every day. I think one thing I do is create a space in between that eventually I've got to let people know that I don't want them to perform well because it looks good on me. I want them to perform well because I have their best interest. And then it allows me to create a safe space of conversation. So you can talk to players or coaches or trainers or staff that I've had a lot of difficult conversations with, and some hard, honest conversations. But just because I'm an in-the-fire manager doesn't mean that it's micromanaging or that I like being around it. It creates a space for you then to make those difficult decisions and to be able to say, we talked about this, I'm moving you out because you didn't understand. So I think it's a false narrative because I'm empathetic that I can't make tough decisions. But people that work alongside me know that's far from the truth.
I thought it was interesting, guys, that he mentioned, he did mention the prior regime off the top. All three of them did, and gave their thanks to Rutherford and Alvin. But RJ did bring up, coming in, learning under Mike Gillis. And I don't think anybody thought that Mike Gillis was too fuzzy. The Twins mentioned Brian Burke and learning from Brian Burke as players, even about community involvement, but other things as well. These guys, all three of these guys have served under some stiff generals. I think they're all going to have some metal to them.
Well, and maybe I put Berkey in their head because I had asked them a bit about that before in terms of who they maybe had talked to, and turned out no one about taking on the job. But I think it was Murph that asked about the community thing, and I that was one of the things that was on my list of things to ask. I think it was Henrik cited the fans at the end of the season still trying to have fun despite everything. And I found myself thinking, how much are you guys going to get out there? Because there's certainly an element of being seen around, not just being seen in the arena, but it's being seen around and doing things and being embedded in the community. And, we talked a lot about Sidney Crosby, obviously, while Jim Rutherford was here, but, the annual routine of Sid surprising season ticket holders, that was just a thing that was known. He was a guy known in Pittsburgh. And that has been, I think, a notable difference in how things have evolved. And some of that's just culture, and that's people, and that's just community, and that's how people are different. But it was important, I thought, for Henrik to cite the old lesson from Brian Burke, which was in many ways a revival of what he believed Pat Quinn had put in place back in the day, that we are important community leaders. We matter in the community. We must be seen in the community and not just paying lip service to it. And I think it's fair to say that was not a priority for Jim Rutherford. Like, that's just not how he operated. And it wasn't a focus. He was there to win. And I mean, listen, if he had found a way to have people out and about more while also winning, I'm sure he would have done it, but they were focused on winning, and that was just not a sort of overall picture. So it's interesting. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. That said, the sort of instinct of going to hospitals and being seen and being at community events, and think about years ago, like there were players who marched in the Pride Parade. Jake Virtanen marched in the Pride Parade, right? Like things like that. I know that's off season. A lot of guys don't live here, but there are things like that. And they need some wins, and those are the kinds of wins that are easy and that you can make happen. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Okay, the big question, and look, we sure as heck talked about it yesterday and previously as this front office was taking shape. These are three longstanding employees of Francesco Aquilini. Do they really have the mettle to keep the owner at bay and keep him out of hockey operations? They were asked about autonomy. You knew the autonomy question was coming up, and frankly, if I did have a criticism of this press conference, it was just how quick and dismissive they wanted to be with this question. Here is, I believe it's Daniel Sedin who starts on it.
100% autonomy. I think when they came to us and discussed their vision and their plan for this, and asked if he wanted to lead this journey, that said a lot about where they are. And we're 100% sure that that's going to be the case.
And herein lies the problem, Henrik, and I do believe he knows this. The vision and the plan often change with this ownership group.
Yes.
And this ownership group has many suggestions along the way. So to me, that is an unanswered question, and still one I would be nervous about, Peach. But you tell me if I'm too cynical, too skeptical on that front.
You remember Mike Gillis started with 100% autonomy too, and that changed for him. So we do know this can change.
Typically, when things go poorly, that's when the full force of ownership starts coming down.
Well, the thing about it is 4 years, no matter what, right? Like, think about it. It takes 4 years and things start always going awry. It's going to be a question there. It's going to be there. I'm sure they know it by now. If they are winning and the team is moving forward, I should not say winning, because the winning is not going to happen right away. But if the plan is progressing and they are delivering on whatever they said they were going to deliver on, it's not going to be as much there. It's when they start getting closer to where they think they should be and they're not, then it will be a problem. Now, we will note that not only was Francesco Aquilini in attendance today, but Roberto was there, along with Michael Doyle. They were in the back of the room. So there is that sense of, are things shifting at Fortress Aquilini? We all hear lots of things going around, lots of debates. This is happening. Paulo's been bought out. Has he been bought out? That kind of thing. But the family's focus, and I reported this 5 years ago, that as long as there was a concern, if there was a concern about sort of the brand, then Roberto would get involved. And I think clearly you can see the backlash on the tickets, right? The backlash on not wanting to rebuild, all that. the desire, and I give them weird credit. Like Francesco makes a statement, didn't take questions. We are told he is going to speak with us again. He will speak with us. He will take questions. They wanted it to be about Sedins and Ryan Johnson, and I for the most part, say they wouldn't be in this position if he spoke more often. And the clear direction is they will make that happen. That they recognized, at least they seem to recognize that they need to be seen a little bit more, because in the end, they are the ones spending the bills, and they are also the ones asking people to spend money. It's not the Sedins asking people to spend money. It's ownership, the business operation, all that. So,
and it's local ownership. Like if you're a local owner,
well, that's
you have to show up.
I mean, you should be members of the community. A couple of things there. Patrick, I was told during this process, before the accelerated departure of Jim Rutherford, that the new GM was going to report to Michael Doyle, that he was going to be made the head of the organization. Clearly that changed when Rutherford stepped away quickly and when Henrik and Daniel stepped up as co-presidents. And as they mentioned, they would be reporting directly to ownership. Secondly, I don't think you can overstate how important the Roberto part is. Because everyone I have ever talked to about the dynamic with the Aquilini family, and Roberto in particular, and first of all, he's kind of the opposite of Francesco. Like, Francesco can be a little, rushing his fences, a little clumsy, a little oafish, a little, cantankerous. Roberto is a calm, poised, polished business guy.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in any other organization, you would say, well, the presence of a guy from the ownership family that really doesn't have the same passion as some of the others for the club would not necessarily be viewed as a good thing. But for me, the presence, and if it is an increased participation from Roberto within the club, that's a really good thing, because I know people who don't even like the guy, but have to give him his due of being a smart, thoughtful business leader. And so I think that's a positive development for the club as well. And I think you're absolutely right that, the Vancouver Canucks pretty much sold themselves for the most part of the Aquilini tenure. Now you have to go out and sell the Vancouver Canucks a bit. And if there is broad recognition across the Aquilini family, because Dax was involved with these interviews, right? I think that is a most positive development for Canucks fans.
Sure. I mean, just to be clear, Dax is Roberto's son and is sort of seen as the future head of the team, if you will, however that works. But anyway, we'll see how things shake out. Certainly today was quality, solid day involving quality, solid people speaking about this team and what they think it needs and what it should be. And that is important, right? Like, I would say there was obviously a misstep with Jim Benning, but for the most part, they have done a good job picking senior hockey leaders. Inevitably, things have gone awry. And a lot of that's been on ownership. And now the question is, can they let these senior hockey leaders do their job, make some mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and also find the right people to staff out, advise them, work with them, do the jobs. Because that's been the longest challenge.
Yeah. Sorry, this isn't a criticism, but
that's been the longest thing, right?
Sorry, guys, this isn't a criticism, but was it a misstep in any way, shape, or form for Daniel to drop Evan Gold's name, do you think? Is there...
I was surprised he used him.
Is there a risk there?
I was surprised he called him by name. I didn't think they would want that out there.
It's not tampering by the written letter, is it?
No, he had permission to interview with the Vancouver Canucks. So I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was just Daniel being honest in a area of the job that's new to him, right? Like... He's never had to talk about who they've interviewed.
Yeah, but let's not remember, the final morning for the Sedins, and I was here as players, right? Like Henrik did his thing, and then Daniel talked for half an hour and basically had to be dragged off stage by Ben Brown because he is a guy that will tell you the truth, and he does. And I think I appreciated that, because there was a lack of clarity on what had happened here. It was a bit of a confusing situation once we discovered on sort of Monday or Tuesday that it actually wasn't going to be Evan Gold. And I, just to be clear on my own reporting, I mostly was secondary a lot of this stuff. But by Friday, I had heard sort of stuff from both sides of the aisle that sure made it sound like that's what was going to happen. I obviously had my bit of a misstep on what I shared on Blue Sky on Monday morning, where I never intended to say that Evan Gold was the guy. But, people took it that way. Because that's what we all thought. Like, I wasn't alone in this. And then we sort of discovered, well, actually, no, maybe not.
Something changed there, Patrick. There is no question something changed. When you were down the road with the candidate talking about staff compensation and compensation, you may not have, quote unquote, offered him the job, but you were really far down the road in terms of making him your next hire. And for those who missed what we were talking, I will paraphrase. I don't believe we have this clip, Mike. But Thomas Drance asked the Sedins to walk us through the last week and the final decision. And Daniel Sedin mentioned that they accepted the offer to step on board, that they talked to Francesco and Jim Rutherford about Ryan and Evan, and were part of the last two interviews with Ryan Johnson and Evan Gold, the Boston Bruins assistant general manager, who finishes as the runner-up on this job search. Can I bring something up to the two of you gentlemen just for discussion? But as we say, we like so much of what we heard. Can't remember the last time we felt this sort of belief, faith, positivity towards anything Canuck. It was your question, sir, Mr. Johnston. You asked them who they consulted with.
Right.
Or if they consulted with anyone before taking this job. And you mentioned Brian Burke, Dave Nonis, Mike Gillis, three guys that, of course, they all played for. Let's hear what Henrik Sedin had to say, because I found this interesting. We'll come back and discuss.
It was.
I think this is the one you want to do.
Yeah, this is question 20, Mike, from PJ, who they consulted with.
I would say no. I mean, we talk to a lot of those people regularly, but not about this specific role. And the reason why we felt so strong about doing this without maybe reaching out to some of those people is, like I said before, we didn't have to sell any plan or any vision. There was something that we agreed to lead, and that was our one of the reasons why we felt so strong of doing this. We're going to be aligned, to George's point. We're going to be aligned. We're going to be committed to do a great job. And if we had to sell something that we had to fight for, it would have been a different story.
Okay, can I pick two nits here, and you guys tell me whether I'm off base or not?
Matt, you would never do such a thing.
Exactly. Stepping out of character here, Peach.
Professional nitpicker.
Oh, says this one. My goodness. Pots and kettles, Blake. Pots and kettles. You had access to three really sharp people. In fact, a couple of brilliant people in Brian Burke and Mike Gillis. And Dave Notis, who's very sharp as well. All of whom have worked for the guys who are about to work for. What would it have hurt to not have those conversations and say, Mike, Dave, Brian, can you empty your brain for me on this and what we're getting into? No? Like, couldn't have hurt. I mean, were they worried that one of them would leak it or something like that? Like, come
Peach,
on.
do you think they've got just such a demonstrably different relationship with the owners right now that they don't see the owners like anybody else does? Is it possible that's why?
No, I mean, I think they...
I think they're wise enough to know, Blake, their relationship and how it's different than most people's relationship.
I think I did find it interesting the way Henrik went, reference the fact that those are all people we talk to regularly. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just was. They've heard the stories. Like, I think that's what I took away, is them acknowledging. Listen, we have heard it It's in
We
the
know.
back of our mind.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Matt. I still would have called up those ones and said, so.
Oh my goodness. Like, I'm sort of like, guys, do your own due diligence, do your own research on it.
But that said, they've been in it, they've been living it. It's not like let's not forget, were they not special advisors to the GM at the first, right? Like when they were working for Jim Benning, right? So it's not like they weren't around that part. They've been coaches the last couple of years, but still the organization, there was a pretty tight-knit group at the top the last few years. So, but you're right. I if it were me, I would still have had the frank. Yes, I had a frank conversation with Brian and Mike separately.
I called up the Harvard and Queens lawyers and picked their brains, in part because they're Harvard and Queens lawyers, and also because they used to run this thing and used to serve at this guy's pleasure. The other thing, the second part of that answer, we didn't have to sell a plan or a vision. It was something we agreed to lead. And again, tell me if I'm being too cynical, skeptical, picking too small a nit. There are only 32 of these jobs.
Well, I think it's
they didn't.
33.
Well, 33 now, I guess, right? Yeah, nice symmetry. I'm sure one of the twins quite likes that number. They didn't yearn for this position. They weren't working their whole lives to get to this position. It wasn't an aspiration of theirs. They said yes when asked. Does that give anybody pause with regards to enthusiasm for the job, even if, as we know, they bleed the colors and the crest?
It's double-sided here, Matt, right? Because you're right. You could then question the intestinal fortitude or the desire to be there. On the flip side, and I talked about this yesterday, what it does mean, though, is, you know what? If the Aquilinis renege on their promise of autonomy, and if they feel like they're banging their head against the wall, I don't think they feel bad about walking away from this or pushing away from this table.
I wasn't even viewing it, Blake, in terms of the prism of the relationship with Aquilini. I was just viewing it from the agnostic position of enthusiasm for the job. Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, shall we ponder Shakespeare? Some are born great, some achieve it, and
I slept through my Shakespeare class. You're gonna have to reveal it to me.
Yeah, but we know the saying. We know the saying. We know the saying. But the point basically is I think most would argue that the Sedins were born great, but they then achieved greatness. And I suppose in a certain level, they've done the trifecta. They've now had greatness thrust upon them. But let me just say, we know how, honestly, in the past, how humble they've been, right? They have been very involved in the community. They have done things around town that they, especially in that retirement year when they left money to BC Children's Hospital, things like that. They have done work around town that they do not go to seek credit for. And in fact, do not want to have any credit for. They simply show up and get the job done. And that's the thing to remember. So, Matt, I do take your point to a degree. You perhaps would like someone to say, yes, I did think long and hard about, this kind of an ambition. But this is their humility, right?
Yeah,
They're like,
fair.
I'm here now. I got asked for the task, and I'm going to take the task on. Yeah, and that to me spoke to who they are, which is not. There's no question to me that they are going to do their best and that they are engaged in the process. Because if they didn't want to, they would have said no, right?
Yeah, I know
if
I knew them to be
jobs in hockey,
if I knew them to be spiritual persons, it would almost be, well, this was the calling. This was what was asked of me, and I stepped up and did the job. It's to extend your Shakespeare reference. These are guys who sat down and asked to be or not to be. Other guys had it resolved in their mind long ago. No, I want to be.
Which, if you actually know the statement of what Hamlet's talking about there, there's a real crazy metaphor.
I may have used it out of context, Peach. I'm not the English lit grad on the show. That's the other one that you see over there. But
The undisputed.
How much
guys,
appetite
honestly-
do you have for this job going forward? I do think is something we have to look at. I hate to bring that up on day one, but it's just this was asked of them. They were not pursuing a path.
Now again,
Hoping it
the
ended
hard
like this.
bullet point details of what they want to do were not there today, and understandably so on day one. But I will say this in that context, their overall presence and clarity of thought about what they think this team and this organization should look like, I think that was there. So you can I understand the not the I don't think it's skepticism, but the worry maybe about their desire for the job or need for the job. But man, they're faking it till they make it. It looks like, because they were saying all the right things and had the right presence.
There was clearly a big contemplation of the job in this day.
Yeah.
Of that, there is no doubt. Of that, there is no doubt. I want to play one more clip here because you brought it up earlier. You brought it up earlier in the interview, Peach. But this was with regards to the last 15 games of the season and the culture change, or at least change in the dressing room that we had all been told about. Farhan asked the question. He talked about all the recent drama that had taken place in the room, and then Henrik and Daniel both took on the question. Henrik with regards to the best players and leadership, and then they both talked about that final 15 games since trade deadline of this season. Here's I believe here's Henrik.
Well, we're not going to talk too much about the past. There's certain things that needs to be in place for us to be able to win on a consistent basis. That means your best players needs to be the best leaders. They got to come in every day and lead the right way, and that's what we're going to ask for this team moving forward. That's all we're going to say. And to be honest, I think the last 15, 20 games last season, I was extremely excited when I left the rink after games because I saw something special happening with that group. So I think there's a lot of good people in that room that want to do well for this organization. So that gave us all hope, I think. And another reason too, I gotta, like, for us as former players and Ryan too, being part of this organization for such a long time, to Danny's point, where when you left those games, and you guys were there too, I mean, how many fan bases would have the wave going around the rink the last game of the season after such a bad season? Because I think they saw something that changed, and that's why we're very excited going forward.
What I love about
they saw smiles.
Well, but what I love about that answer, gentlemen, is Daniel interjected off the tail of Sedin, of Henrik, with that thought. He wanted to get that out there. He wanted to share his observations about the last 15 games and his excitement about what he saw, the seeds of something developing, burgeoning there. And then, Henrik following up and tailing Daniel, and I suspect we'll have to get used to that again, interviewing them in a combined environment. They answer questions a lot like they pass the puck, with just effortless ease back and forth, and almost always on the same page. Peach, thanks for the yeoman's work today. Appreciate this. Okay, we will catch up with you next week. How does that sound? Look forward to the stories already in tomorrow's province and tomorrow's time.
We'll have lots, Wayne Sparrow commentary as well after all the Whitecaps are forgotten.
We have a Whitecap story to discuss as well, Peach, at some point. And you may have hit me with something I wasn't aware of. Did Wayne Sparrow say something here recently? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I talked to him twice in the last 24 hours.
Okay. All right. Okay. I thought Mr. Sparrow, Chief Sparrow, had given up the goods here on the Whitecaps.
No.
He went golfing.
I can tell you he went golfing with Jim Rutherford on Tuesday. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note.
Thank you, Peach. Yeah. Let us know the scorecards if you dig that up. I'd be interested in what
we
Rutherford
ain't got
shoots.
time for the Whitecaps to relocate today. We don't.
No,
we just
exactly,
do not have
exactly,
no.
or announce or stadium or anything like that. Come on,
yes, or that too. Yes.
Guys, everything is happening. Okay, let's just go back. Rob Williams is going to join us here in a second. I just want to get back to the top here and everything that's happened. Francesco Aquilini delivered a statement, did not take questions off the top of this, called it a great day for the Vancouver Canucks, a day where they were turning the page. He was excited for the new chapter. His thank yous to Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, then the clip Lee played earlier, which I think is quite important, where he talked about the rebuild is underway, and then explained that in the last couple of weeks, after Jim Rutherford asked for an accelerated departure, he went to the Sedins and asked them to be co-presidents. So we've talked long about the Canucks process and what we thought was simply a GM search off the top, and which frankly was just a GM search 3 weeks ago when Jim Rutherford met the media and told us of Patrick Alvin's dismissal. Francesco talked about an exhaustive search. They wanted to leave no stone unturned, and this time that actually happened, as opposed to the last time he talked about that and hired Rutherford 72 hours later. And then that he left the choice up to the Sedins to select the GM, and they both confirmed that they spoke with both or interviewed both Evan Gould and Ryan Johnson and chose their ex-teammate Mr. Johnson to be the 13th general manager of the Vancouver Canucks. Daniel and Hank took the stage. Daniel, the other thing I thought was interesting, Blake, because those of us who remember them as players and remember the press conference with Alain Vigneault when they were named captain and assistant captain, Hank has always been a little bit more talkative, chatty than Daniel. Can still remember AV being asked, why Henrik captain and Daniel assistant? And he said, well, if you know them, Hank's a little bit more outgoing. He's a little bit more talkative. I thought Daniel took the lead on a lot of the questions there today.
I felt like Daniel was the emotional answerer and Henrik was more the logistical answerer. Again, big brother. He'll have the keys to the car.
Yeah, he's a few
Daniel,
minutes
you're riding
older.
shotgun.
That's right. Yeah. And then Ryan Johnson gave his opening statement, and he talked about how much the fan base here means to him. And I thought something that was very appropriate, and particularly given what he and Manny Malhotra and the staff and players of the Abbotsford Canucks achieved last spring. He had a lot of thank yous for the people at the Rogers Forum and Abbotsford and those who helped him along the way. In fact, he gave what I thought was a really cool answer about his organic journey to this chair. Mike, if we can play that, it's the second question, Q2. Ryan Johnson talking about his journey to a general manager's chair with the Vancouver Canucks. We'll hear this and then we'll get to Rob Williams. Here's RJ.
Well, I think my journey here has been very organic. I started as a consultant with Mike Gillis and Stan Smeal and that group. And so I've spent a lot of time very early just listening, spending a lot of time observing, just as I did as a player, trying to take in information. And as you go from development and into managing an AHL team and working with amateur staffs and pro staffs and then being GM of it, it's been an organic journey. So I haven't jumped the line. I've got to know specifically, and one thing I'm proud of is one organization for a long time. A lot of people in here I'm familiar with and have worked very closely with. So I think that journey, I never had an agenda to work my way. I just wanted to do good work, do it with good people, and it's led me to this.
I love his tone. I love the fact that he's a good talker without sounding like he's just flapping his gums. He seems pragmatic in thought. He breeds a lot of confidence. Again, for all these guys, Matt, proof is going to be in the pudding, and I get people that might be uber skeptical right now, but you have to love the way it was presented and what details they could give. I mean, what was said too. He's right. He's earned this. He's climbed all the rungs. He hasn't jumped a single rung on the ladder. He's touched them all, and he deserves the chance to prove that he's got it.
He has served what our old friend Wally Bono, one of the great leaders we've been around, would call an appropriate apprenticeship to take this position and do these duties going forward. Let's welcome in Rob Williams, the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports Vertical, who joins us by the looks of it from the Daily Hive's offices. Rob, how are you?
Doing great, guys. It was a interesting day over at Rogers Arena, an exciting one. I think the sign of the mark of a new era. It certainly had that feel listening to the Sedins and Ryan Johnston speak.
What did you walk out of the arena thinking about, Rob? What struck you?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, I think the Sedins and Ryan Johnston were always going to hit the right notes in terms of culture, in terms of class, and I think that they ooze that, right? As Blake was saying, proof's in the pudding, though, right? Like, we got to see what they're going to do. They didn't have they didn't say, hey, we're gonna can these guys in scouting, and we're gonna get rid of these assistant general managers, and we're gonna find a new coach. They didn't come in saying all that, but of course, there's got to be some changes made. So, do they know the changes to make? Remains to be seen. But this is always going to be a PR win on day one, because those are classy individuals, and they're people that they care. I'll speak about the Sedins in particular because we know them the best. That they bleed blue and green. Even as players, when they had every right to leave, pull what Rick Tocchet and Quinn Hughes and all the others did in recent years. The Sedins took more crap than anybody in this organization, and they stayed in Vancouver. And you want to cheer for those guys, right? Like the franchise icons. How amazing would the story be if they were the ones to lift this team up to new heights? But let's see what their plan is. Let's see what they have to offer.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Rob, that it was always going to be a PR win. Look, there's been so few good days for the Vancouver Canucks that I think we're clinging to all the positivity here, but you're absolutely right that, day one was always going to be good, and your hope, I think, as a Canucks fan, is that day two is better than day one and day three better than day two, and so on, because there's a massive project that is sitting before three gentlemen who, let's face it, have zero experience in their current positions. And so you not only have the learning on the job part that I think is something that bears watching and a potential concern, but also the project itself and whether or not these guys can be the ones who are successful at doing it. You mentioned the lack of timelines, and we haven't heard that clip yet. At least I don't think we have. Oh, we heard RJ talk about the lack of timeline on the rebuild, but they also talked about how it was going to take time on the coach's future. It's going to take time on the staff future, although they did recognize that the people they hire and bring into the organization are going to be a big part of that. Why don't we start with the coaching side here? Mike, can we play clip 11 here, question 11, where RJ is asked, Ryan Johnston is asked for the first time in the session, if I'm not mistaken, because he was asked a couple of times about the future of head coach Adam Foote. We'll come back and discuss.
Well, I think if you look at last year as a whole, it's really tough to evaluate a coach or anyone with all the adversity of the injuries, the goaltending, everything that went on. There were so many variables that changed the course of the season. Obviously, there was some drama around the group. To evaluate Adam just on that is unfair. We're just, this is day one on the job. We're going to talk about things as we will top to bottom in the organization, areas that we can improve. But that's going to take us some time to sit. So to evaluate based off of last season, I think is pretty unfair.
There's not often that I hope to hear just empty words out of a person from officialdom. I sort of hope those are empty words, that he doesn't want to come out on day one and sewer the head coach. Because here's the thing. I don't know why last year would have been an unfair environment to evaluate Adam Foote on.
I think he's being polite. I think he's just being polite.
Rob, do you think Adam Foote got a fair shake and is up for a fair evaluation on his body of work in his one season with the Canucks?
Yeah, I was trying to decipher the same thing, guys. Like that was a classy answer, right? But surely he must have a feel as to which way he's going to go. I feel like if he's going to get rid of Adam Foote, I think that's a totally reasonable answer he could have given there, where he says, "Look, it's unfair to evaluate him." I think the message there is like, what a tire fire this team was. Like, what a brutal hand he was dealt. Now, I think there were also issues with, I think you can poke many holes in the coaching job that Adam Foote did last season. I don't think that they'd be smart to bring him back. But yeah, it's really hard to decipher there. Like, was he being polite and just buying time?
I sure hope so.
And not coming out guns a blazing. Yeah, that's sort of what I took it to mean. I don't think that was an answer that leads me to believe that Foote is likely back next season.
Yeah, because here it is, and your reporter Trevor Beggs had this earlier, I believe it was yesterday. He dug up an old interview with Ryan Johnson talking about Manny Malhotra. This was to Chris Faber and Canucks in-house media. Quote, "We grew together in a sense. I trusted him to the end with anything and everything." I mean, that very much says to me, if those aren't empty words, that Ryan Johnson has a idea for head coach, and it's the guy who's coaching the baby Canucks, that being Manny Malhotra, who of course may well be in demand here with the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he also has.
And that's the only downside here, guys, with him being pragmatic about this and with the political answer is that the world keeps spinning here for all these people that could be dismissed, that need to be hired. The world is going to keep spinning here, and you do have to make some decisions. Like, if Adam Foote wants to work next year, I'm sure he would love to start working on that file. If Manny Malhotra is going to be the coach here, then the other teams around the NHL want to know that so they can move on with their file, and Manny needs to tell them that I'm out because I'm staying here in Vancouver. I mean, the world. I understand them wanting the weekend probably, but I mean, I would hope by the end of next week, Rob, that they're on these two things.
Oh yeah. Surely to God, Ryan Johnson must know if he wants Adam Foote back or not. Like, it's not. This is not going to get decided with having like 3 meetings. I don't think. If any management group is going to hire or want to hire Manny Malhotra as their head coach, wouldn't it be this one? Like, the Sedins is a former teammate of theirs. They saw his leadership qualities as a player. They've all seen him in the Canucks organization now in 2 different stints. You've got the Sedins that spent all that time out in Abbotsford. They would have spent tons of time talking to Manny. Then Ryan Johnson, the Abbey Canucks GM, won a championship with Malhotra as his coach. If not these guys, then who is going to hire Manny Malhotra? It makes a ton of sense. He helped graduate a number of their players to the NHL. It seems like an obvious move, with this particular group. Like, if it was Evan Gold as the GM, I don't know if he hires Manny, but with these guys, it seems like, why wouldn't you go in that direction?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rob, guest choice here. You want to talk about Elias Pettersson and the answers there? Or you want to talk about the rebuild? You tell me, buddy.
Let's go, Petey.
All right. We have got to talk about Elias Pettersson. We have waited long enough on the answers about Elias Pettersson. Mike, let's play the clip. This is question 16. I believe this was from Barry DeLay of Global. I could be wrong here. But it was a question basically talking about, chances of moving Elias Pettersson. Ryan Johnson took the lead on this answer.
Here's my initial thought on Elias is I want to wipe away all the expectations and all that may exist in him. Just like the rest of our hockey club, not just our players, but our staff, is we're asking them to come September the most prepared that they could be. And for our players, that's going to be physically and mentally ready to make a decision. So it's to jump to any conclusion, but no, I'm looking forward to talking to him and just letting him know that that's what's important to me out of the gates. And like I just said, and I'll reiterate again, I'm going to challenge these guys to be as good as the teammates that they can for each other. And if we commit to those little things, everybody's going to be better for it, him included.
What did we think of that from the
preparation
new GM
again,
Elias?
right? Preparation being mentioned again. We've heard this before.
And right after this, right after that answer, Daniel spoke about. I really love the way Daniel spoke about it, where
we have that clip, Rob. Why don't we play that clip so everyone knows what you're talking about? Here's Daniel on Elias.
Elias, we've been through this as players, exactly what he's been through. You're going to have some really good seasons. You're going to have some tougher seasons. What we found after a long career, looking back, is that the best seasons we had, we were well prepared. To Artie's point, that is everything you can control. It's how hard you work in the summer. Mentally, you're ready to go when training camp hits. So I think that's the one message to him is preparation. And like I said, we had some bad seasons too, and those times we maybe didn't prepare the way we should have.
That is an outstanding answer. I can't get over how authoritative Daniel Sedin was on some of these. No, but honestly, guys, he was sort of the second voice, right? Like he was always the guy who came in on the tail end of Hank and just pretty much agreed with everything his brother said. I mean, I once went to them and said, guys, I've got to apologize. I sort of think of you as just in a more, like as a unit as opposed to two individual people who may think differently on things. Then they said, you don't have to worry about that because for the most part, we do agree on just about everything. But Daniel often played second fiddle, and I couldn't get over on a few occasions today how sort of authoritative and strong and honest and direct he was with his words. Yep. Rob, my question to you, though, is it's not like Elias Pettersson and Daniel Henrik Sedin are just going to meet tomorrow. Yep. They've known each other for an awfully long time, and Elias has not availed himself of the sort of expertise and the roadmap and the pathway that these two guys can light. And, when Daniel talks about their journeys being similar, it only, for me, crystallizes how much of a help the Sedin twins could have been for Elias if only he had sought them and not had this stubbornness to be left alone.
He doesn't have to wait for them anymore. That's the beauty. The power dynamic has now changed.
That's
and it's, hey, can you meet
Blake.
me in my office, please? We need to talk about preparation. So that has all changed now. And they can have the hard conversation whether Elias wants it or not. And I have one word with regards to the preparation: roller skis. Remember the meme picture of the Sedins back home in Sweden with the street skis, the cross-country skis? Like they're basically like a super long rollerblade. That's what they use for training. I'm telling you, they got to lend those to Elias Pettersson, and he'll come in and score 50 goals. That's what it's going to happen.
I thought it was a great no-nonsense kind of answer. And I mean, it was similar to what we've heard though from the past. So like, I think everyone's right to be skeptical still with PD. Like, let's, proof's in the pudding for him as well. Preparation is something that is being hammered home over and over and over with Rutherford and Elvin. I feel like it hits differently though when the message comes from the Sedins because they've walked in his shoes, right? Like they've been the high draft pick. They've had the weight of expectations on them. They've struggled and overcame it, and did so with fewer, with fewer natural physical abilities than PD has in many ways, right? They just worked hard and were smart. So I think it does hit home differently in that sense. The other thing is they didn't. You notice nobody uttered JT Miller's name today. Like, thank God we don't have to talk about. Like, nobody was like, yeah, since we had to trade JT. Like, there's none of that. So maybe there's a page is turned to some degree, but I mean, it's a fascinating decision that Ryan Johnston is going to have to make. Do they cut their losses on Elias now, or do they bank that this regime change will affect change with Elias come next season?
It is the $1 million question, or the $11.6 million question, Rob, as we enter this off season. Okay, you chose to go rebuild first, or Elias first. Let's get on to rebuild. Mike, I want clip 25 here. Right towards the end, a great question by Harmon Doyle about the rebuilding formula here in a rising cap environment. Ryan Johnston took the lead on this question. We discussed it a little bit earlier in the show, but I think it's worth doubling down on because this tells me that Ryan Johnston is prepared for the exercise. Here's RJ.
Well, again, and that's you've got to be strategic of where you sit, the people that you bring in, and how you can get them to perform to what their value is come a trade deadline. We're open to anything and everything, and where we sit and with the space that we believe that we will have to take on situations that give us draft capital. It's as simple as that. We know that's how we want to grow, and that's something that we're not going to be afraid to do.
And there was a little bit of criticism on social media about another answer that they gave on the rebuild. And Blake, you'll have to help me out with regards to who actually uttered it. It may have been RJ talking about, well, you don't necessarily have to spend to the cap in a rebuild. And I know there are some fans that hear that and go, ownership's so cheap, rebuild, fewer tickets sold, they're not going to spend. No, it's just sort of good process. Like, you don't actually have to spend to the cap in a rebuild,
and the opportunities will be fewer now. So like it'll just be tougher to do that. Like, the bad contracts are not going to be as readily available.
Yeah. Rob, the umbrella question from me, what did you make of the talk from the stage on rebuild today?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get into nitty gritty details, nor do I expect them to. In terms of big picture, like, they didn't say anything like super alarming, like Jim Benning style, like we believe we can be a playoff team, or we want to go for the playoffs every year. They didn't say anything like ridiculous like that. They were talking about bringing in, I thought Ryan Johnston talked a lot about the environment. I thought that was a really, astute way of putting it, and I think that goes to mean like having the right setup, having the right place for your young players to be coming into your organization. I think that's going to be vitally important. And I think that was a really good answer, as was, just saying like, look, we're going to be, I think I'll even give Francesco some kudos here, talking about being competitive and that not having to be mutually exclusive, with rebuilding. And I think that's what we criticized the Canucks on a number of occasions last season, where there was no compete in this group. They rolled over far too many times. So yeah, you want to see those signs of progress. I think it was Johnson that also spoke about like filling the building, not because of wins and losses, but because of people being able to see like what they're building. And I thought that was also another good way to put it, where it's like, look, people just want to see a plan. They want to see a team grow, and they want to get behind something that they believe in.
Okay, Rob, thank you, sir. We're looking for one more clip here. Live show. Appreciate your efforts here and availability to us as always, my friend. Okay, a lot of reporting to do here in the coming days, so look forward to reading you and all of your staff on the Daily Hive. Thanks for this, buddy.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
That is Rob Williams, the national sports editor of the Daily Hive, and it's Offside Sports Vertical. I'm sorry, Blake, you want to play one more thing here? Blake's got to run. He's got a flight to catch out of Minneapolis, but there was one other clip that you wanted to get to here.
Mike, can you bring up that Canucks Army clip that they cut on Twitter?
Okay, why don't you tell us about Yellow Dog while Mike is doing that? And
Let's do that.
I also want to...
Cinco de Mayo is behind us, alas, but it is still that kind of season, right? To get into the Mexican beer frame of mind. And so we want to tell you about a fabulous mixed box, if you will, from Yellow Dog. It's called the Hombre and Lucha Agave Mix Pack. And this is your new go-to. 8-pack. Zesty Ombre Lime Margarita, Juicy Ombre Tropical Margarita, the crisp Lucha Lime Ranch Water, and bright, refreshing Lucha Grapefruit Ranch Water. This pack is ready to party, and now you are too if you go pick it up from Yellow Dog Spirits.
You have that, Mike? The clip? Okay, we need a minute for the clip here. They were asked about practice facility. He was very well couched by Patrick Johnston, who wants to take this on.
Practice Johnson. That's good.
Yeah, practice. Practice Johnston asked about the facility and couched it by saying, be careful on who answers this because you'll be asked about it time and time again. It was Henrik Sedin that was asked about it. He said it's very close to having a deal done. Super excited. And then he talked about how it would help the community before he talked about how it would help the Canucks, which I think is quite telling.
Pretty savvy.
Of Henrik. I want to share this tweet, Mike. We've got the visual because he's in our world now. He does his own show at La Belle Province and the city of Montreal. And mentioned him earlier in the show, Maxime Lapierre, who's a colleague of ours here on the Nation Network and his show La Poche Bleue. Max was effusive in his belief in the Twins and Ryan Johnson, saying, quote tweeting a Sportsnet tweet about them saying, now they will win. Trust me. So awesome stuff there from Max Lapierre, who we're going to get on the program here soon to talk about his ex-teammates rising into these stations. Do you have that clip that he's looking for, Mike? No? Okay. Blake, we're going to need to play that tomorrow, okay? One last thing I want to show here. Interesting yesterday from Adam Wilde of the Steve Dangle Podcast Network. Obviously, they were talking a little bit about Evan Gold. He was a runner-up for the Leafs job as well. And he said that he was told by multiple sources that Evan Gold was offered the GM position, so not just that they got down to negotiating or at least thinking out what a Gold FO front office would look like, but was lowballed below the $1 million mark, the $750,000 range that had been a talking point throughout the process that the Canucks were not willing to buck up. Wild also reporting the Canucks do not have the same R&D, analytics, computing systems for prospects and current players as most of the league. That's been talked about as well. And then later, and interestingly, he mentioned how the future buyout of Paolo Aquilini may have affected the way the Canucks have funded this front office. It wasn't quite as succinct as this quote, as this tweet from Sapster put it. It was a little more couched, and I know because I spoke to Adam about a couple of things. But, there is a lot of talk right now around NHL circles about the composition of the Canucks front office, whether this new group is going to be given all the tools, all the right things were said today, and whether or not there is a stress or pressure point with Paolo Aquilini leaving the Canucks, and that was announced some time ago, but of course it is a significant chunk of money. that Roberto and Francesco would have to come up with if their brother expects or needs or is ruled to be made whole on his share of Canucks.
But on the flip side, Matt, they're spending money. Like they're going to still give a bunch of money to Jim Rutherford here. Adam Foote's got money remaining, and they're paying him. Patrick Allvin.
But I think
the practice facility. There's money being spent.
Yeah. Well, I think the question is, Blake, will there be robbing Peter to pay Paul going forward here? Or if you are actually going to be saving money on the cap because you're not spending to the ceiling in a rebuild, can those monies be redirected to other parts of the organization? Let's do Bet365 quickly, our bets of the day, because Blake's got to get out of here. Mr. Price, you take the lead here. What do you like tonight?
By the way, I got the result yesterday, but I needed the empty net goal from the Colorado Avalanche, and I didn't get that. So alas, Ducks need to advance. We've talked about this because the Wild losing means that, the draft pick is improving here for the Canucks, that second first round pick, but they need the Ducks to win. They do. So take the Ducks. It's not huge cheddar at minus 105, but cheer on the Ducks, and the Canucks just get better.
The Canucks draft pick improves from 24 to 23 if Anaheim makes the conference final. I'm with you, but I'm going to take them to win in regulation, which gives me a little extra juice here at plus 155 on Anaheim. Get out of here, Blake, okay? You got a flight to catch.
All right, see you folks. See you tomorrow.
Presentation of Bet365. Tired of waiting for the end of the game to get paid? Ready to move on to the next puck drop? That's why Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, is 3-goal early payout. If the team you're riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey moves fast, and now with 3-goal early payout, there's one less thing you have to wait around for. Bet365. Download the app. See what early payout's all about. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Thank you, Mr. Rogerson, because we stressed you some today with all of these freewheeling clips on the fly moments after they were uttered here on today's program. So big thank you to Mike for today. Our menu today, brought to you, as always, by our friends at Greta. A fantastic spot to pregame or postgame. You are mere steps from the arena or the stadium, and if you are planning a private party, you absolutely must check out Greta. They have a private riser at the back. You've got your own bar there, so the service is exceptional. You're surrounded by televisions. You can watch whatever games you want to watch. And, of course, what Greta's known for, that complete arcade that encircles the bar, a game for everybody. If you want to play an old schooler like NBA Jam, you can do that. If you want to play Pop-A-Shot, air hockey, they have Twister, going way, way back on that one, plus all the new school games. Check that out, as well as an awesome, delicious menu of street food. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com, Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Well, as we alluded to right there at the end, there's another massive sports story here in Vancouver today, and that is the future of the Whitecaps. And, of course, we had that summit meeting yesterday here in town involving 3 levels of government, 3 First Nations, the Whitecaps, MLS. Got details on that. Blake's also done some reporting there, so all of that is coming up. The Whitecaps were big winners on the pitch again last night. All they do is win, win, win. We'll also talk some baseball. There was a really touching, heartwarming story at Nat Bailey last night. We'll get to that, as well as the Blue Jays with an exciting win. The Mariners losing their star player for a little bit. We got BC Lions camp underway. We got the Seahawks schedule about to drop. So all of that is coming up on Sekeres and Price. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center in the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee. The real win happens after the final buzzer. Stay downtown, stay comfortable, stay close to everything. At Sheraton Vancouver Wall Center, your game day home base starts at wallcenter.com. Well, the big summit meeting yesterday at the Pacific Rim Hotel here in downtown Vancouver, and coming out of that, which included, of course, an MLS vice president, local officials trying to come up with ways to save the Caps. A joint statement has been issued on those efforts to keep the team in Vancouver. I will read it for our podcast audience. This joint statement demonstrates a unified commitment from all partners to keep the Whitecaps in Vancouver for generations to come. The city, province, federal government, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh Nations, PAFCO, and private partners are aligned and working together within a positive framework to deliver an even better future for soccer in our city. That includes improving the game day economic model at BC Place, exploring additional sponsorship opportunities, and advancing work on potential sites for a new stadium and development. Let's be clear, Vancouver is open for business. We're doing everything we can to keep the Whitecaps here, and we're committed to building a long-term solution that reflects the scale, ambition, and global future of this city. Leave the statement up for a second, Mike, because I just want to break it down here. That third sentence, that includes improving the game day economic model at BC Place, exploring additional sponsorship opportunities, and advancing work on a potential site for new stadium and development. We know about improving the game day economic model at BC Place for the most part. Just more revenue streams or a greater percentage of the revenues from food and bev and things of that order for the way. Exploring additional sponsorship opportunities. Is that things like BC Hydro, BC Lotteries that you were talking about the other day, Blake, that do sponsorship deals with the Canucks but aren't doing that with the Caps right now?
That is certainly part of it, yeah. And then one of the other hangups I've heard is that because it's PAVCO, because they don't run BC Place and can't dictate what goes where.
Who's they? The province? Who's they? The province?
The Whitecaps have been restricted in creating customized marketing installations, if you will, in the stadium that you'll see elsewhere. Right, that it's the lounge presented by blah blah blah. This restaurant presented by you would integrate all that like at Rogers Arena. Like you can make it yours, and you can sell all those nooks and crannies of the stadium, all the stuff on the outside. You can elevate what you offer when you run the place, if you own the place, all that sort of stuff. And they don't have those avenues that, like, I can tell you right now, Matt, I was at Allianz Field last night here in Minneapolis, calling the Rapids and Minnesota United. This place is mind blowing. This stadium, like, it's absolutely mind blowing. What they've got and what it looks like. And this is a city. I mean, if it's larger than Vancouver, I'd be surprised. Minneapolis, St. Paul. It has a football stadium. It has a baseball stadium. It has a soccer stadium. It has a hockey arena. It has a basketball arena.
Yes. And we're going to get into, in a moment, sports franchises in the United States, why they're more valuable, why the owners have more money available to them to build facilities. And, of course, as we know, jurisdictions, all three levels of government, or at least certainly two, state and local, have been more inclined to put forward actual real money to build stadiums. The third part of that sentence, advancing work on potential sites for a new stadium and development. That sounds like we're still in the infancy in terms of where the new stadium will go, or any kind of permissions if a site has been selected.
It's a long road. It's a long road. I mean, I've been told that, we're talking about 5 to 7 years, before you're playing in that stadium from today, like it's just how long it'll take to get the paperwork done and ground up, find the money. Like it's a long-term play. So BC Place will get used. And all these renovations that they just did, they still will be useful in the next half decade to almost full decade.
That brings me back to the question of how patient are Don Garber and the MLS board going to be with the stadium they have deemed not tenable, not viable in the past.
They're 5 years away from a stadium in Vegas too, so it's
fair enough.
That's the same timeline.
Now, many have pointed out this statement isn't co-signed by the Whitecaps, and that could be completely innocent because they say, well, it's about us. We shouldn't be signing a statement about us, or it could be a tell that they're not on board with all this. The Caps will be releasing a statement later today. In fact, by the time you watch or listen to this, it may already be out. You had the news, Blake, that the Caps are going to issue something by way of public declaration on all this by the end of the day.
Yeah, and no one has told me what's in that statement. I'll just go back to what I've said previously about just this whole process. The other groups, like this, these are all just government entities on this statement. The government entities have been the gas pedal, and the Whitecaps have been the brakes. Not because they want to be the bad guys. They just they don't want people getting false hope. They want to be as realistic about this process as possible. So they're being very pragmatic in what they are saying. They don't want to be gotcha'd, 6 months down the road and said, you said this was going to happen. They're just being slow here, I think, and trying to.
And I hear that, but that also could be their way of covering what is a parallel negotiation and deal going on to sell this team to the Gustafson Group in Vegas.
That might be very well happening too, Matt, and that would be what they need to do as well to cover, like the owners, not Axel Schuster per se, but the owners. If they want to sell, then they have to chase their own interest there, right? Like, I would be surprised if there isn't a parallel stream of them doing that. Doesn't mean that this stream isn't a genuine interest.
But it does mean that this stream has to be competitive and beat or at least come close to the Vegas offer. BC Minister Ravi Kahlon, quote, "It was a very positive meeting." Harjo Hall of the Daily Hive with some good reporting here. She staked out the meeting, dogged as ever, and said that Federal Minister of Housing and Infrastructure Gregor Robertson, of course, the former mayor of Vancouver, was at the big meeting. My ears perked earlier this year when I saw the feds are going to be involved. What interest would the feds have? But that it was Gregor Robertson makes sense. And Jeff Mallett was in attendance, the Whitecaps minority partner, of course.
Yeah, all that's great news. And I'm just pulling this out of my ass.
Kerfoot wasn't there. I am a little surprised that a meeting of this size and the majority owner, Greg Kerfoot, isn't there.
Maybe
I know Greg doesn't.
Media.
Well, yeah, reclusive, fear of media. It's part of the reason why he is amongst the sports franchise owners I've ever met who knows the public the least, like doesn't quite understand the public. Like that became clear in a few conversations with Greg that there is a wide gap between his understanding of Joe and Joanne Public. That's also a little ominous to me as well, with regards to parallel negotiations. I mean, you got provincial and federal ministers. Was the mayor in the meeting too? My understanding, like a VP of MLS, like there's some pretty heavy hitters there, Greg. Like surely you can slip out the kitchen to the back if you don't want to walk out the front door.
I do wonder, seeing that Gregor obviously is the former mayor, as you mentioned, so he's just got an intense connection with the city. But I also wonder, in his current seat in the feds, if there isn't a connection to public housing to a future development. Like, I wonder if that's a way to give a lot of concessions to the Whitecaps' new stadium site, if there's public housing involved in some way, shape, or form, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So, incidentally, Matt, A tweet from Har there. I want to be clear about what I said yesterday, and if I said it inelegantly yesterday, my sincerest apologies to Har in correcting a quote there regarding the stadium roof. So I apologize profusely, Har. I hope there are no bad feelings going forward.
I was going to ask if you joined me in saying good reporting by Har. So well done.
It's always good reporting by Har.
It is almost. Yes, you're quite right. Excellent reporting. She is on the Whitecaps.
We are all human.
Stock and barrel. Exactly. Good reporting also here from Trevor Beggs, the Daily Hive. Stressors are plenty for the Whitecaps, but here's one that no one is talking about. A seldom discussed Trump tax break could give prospective Vegas owners or other American cities a financial advantage over Vancouver with hundreds of millions. So it's called the Opportunity Zone program. It was introduced by Trump in his first term and enacted within the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It incentivizes investment in lower income areas through tax advantages. So what does that mean? Well, as Trevor points out, if the Whitecaps were bought for $500 million and this Gustafson group, but it could be anyone, put another $500 million into the building of a stadium. So you have a total investment of $1 billion, $500 million per each. The value of the stadium, because of the land, the value of the club, because they tend to go up as well. Let's say they all rose annually by 10%. So what you'd get over 10 years is a $1 billion investment that is now worth $2.6 billion. And that additional $1.6 billion in growth would be tax-free because of these acts enacted by the Trump administration in its first term, which it has said will continue here through its second term and in their hope beyond. Trevor plays out the scenario in Vancouver, the same scenario, $1.6 billion in growth. If you sold at that point, the owners would be hit with a $430 million tax bill. So those are the sorts of financial inequities that take place between sports franchise ownership in the United States and Canada, which makes it all the more tricky, difficult to keep this team in Vancouver. And while that's all very good reporting and explanation from Trevor on this specific act and the specific tax advantages if Vegas builds a stadium in a low-income area, it's long been true that sports franchises are more valuable in the United States than Canada, and you can trace it all the way back to President George W. Bush, a former sports franchise owner of the Texas Rangers, who enacted tax breaks for sports franchise owners during his first term. The 2004 Americans Job Creation Act, it allowed sports franchise owners to allocate 90% or more of a team's purchase price to, quote, intangible assets. This is things like player contracts, broadcasting rights. So under the tax code, those intangible assets can be treated as depreciating over 15 years. And that creates huge tax deductions that can be used to offset the income of other businesses. So these tax benefits under the Bush White House are considered a major reason why sports franchise values have absolutely ballooned over the years. Basically, a very rich person making tons of money off their core business, in the case of the Gustafson Group Public Storage, can buy a sports franchise and start lowering their tax rate on that core business via the sports franchise. This has been in place for 20 years. So you've got a couple different levels of the U.S. tax code that very much works in the favor of a sports franchise owner. That isn't the case in Canada. So this is what you're up against.
And I do wonder if something, I mean, it's not going to be exactly like that in Canada, but if something in the vicinity, in the area code of tax breaks like that are part of the solution here for the Whitecaps. And it wouldn't be, I think you'd restrict it to the Whitecaps, not to core businesses. But the truth of the matter is, the Whitecaps have a proverbial gun to the head of the government, because if we leave, you don't get any of our tax money anyhow. So how about you get none of our tax money and we stay and we remain a community asset and blah, 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 right? If they leave, you're getting no tax money from them anyhow. And you're not getting any tenant at BC Place. So it's a leverage point for them, and one that I think, the common man can sort of wrap their head around. Was, if they leave, we don't get their tax benefit anyhow.
Yeah. Of course, Canadian politicians have been far more hesitant to give tax breaks to the wealthy in the United States. It's because the donor class finances their campaigns to in some case, an awfully large degree. It's not quite as pay for play in Canada, but I hear what you're saying. On the pitch,
I was amazed too, Matt, at in Minneapolis, where I am now, the number of huge corporations whose head offices are in Minneapolis. It's mind blowing. Like, what are they doing? Why is their head office in Minneapolis? But there's huge companies, and we just don't have that. And it does make it a little bit harder. That being said, it sounds like private sponsorships via the Board of Trade and via the summit yesterday. It sounds like companies are willing to step up, not for ownership, but for marketing and sponsorship. We'll see if it plays out in the right way.
Yeah. Target.
Yeah.
Head office, Minneapolis. Didn't quite work in Canada, but sure works in the United States. U.S. Bank Corp, really big one, headquartered in Minneapolis. As for the pitch, well, they did it again. Erased an early 1-0 deficit on goals by Sebastian Berhalter and a Dallas own goal from an Edier Ocampo cross into the box. Dallas tied it in the second half at 2s. And then Berhalter was at it again. A belter from outside the box that slipped through the keeper's fingers. Bad goal if you're Dallas, but hey, winning goal if you're Vancouver. Berhalter, the first player in Caps history to record a goal contribution in 9 of the opening 12 matches of the season. He was the man of the match. Just this continued upward trajectory for the U.S. midfielder, who we suspect is going to be part of the U.S. World Cup team here next month. Caps now unbeaten in 7 overall. They're 2 wins and 2 draws in their 4 road matches this year. They have yet to lose under Jesper Sorensen when they have a halftime lead. 21 wins, 3 draws. And they are also back atop the MLS table as San Jose lost 3-2 in Seattle. So tied on points with the Earthquakes, but with a game in hand heading into a Saturday clash in Houston as they cross the state of Texas.
LAFC has now lost 3 matches in a row across all competitions, 2 straight in the league. Yeah, so San Jose has been a big surprise, but San Diego and LAFC being human is a big boost to the Whitecaps.
Does that spell trouble for our old friend Mark DeSantos, who is the head coach of LAFC? I can't imagine they are accustomed to losing all that many games in a row.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe. If it continues, I'd be worried.
I sure hope Mark makes it to the first match against the Whitecaps. Would love to see that storyline play out. And good on Ranko Veselinovic. We've been waiting for this. He's been available for selection, did not take the pitch. But he did yesterday after 298 days coming off that knee injury, ACL surgery. He came on for Andres Kubes in the 85th minute. I suspect he's in line for more playing time Saturday as the Caps played their 3rd game in a week. Good to see Ranko get some run.
And Kubas got a knock last night too, so that's a concern. I mean, you can't risk. He's got a World Cup coming up. I'd be surprised if he plays on the weekend now for the Whitecaps. They weren't concerned in the macro sense, but in the micro sense, I think they are a little bit concerned that he's going to be able to start the World Cup with Paraguay. So,
and he blistered one just wide in the first half yesterday, which would have been a second goal for Vancouver. An absolutely awesome scene last night at historic Nat Bailey Stadium and a heartwarming story for the Meyer family of North Vancouver. We mentioned this yesterday that the visiting Everett Aquasox were starting a North Van kid on the mound, and Adam Meyer, a former UBC Thunderbird, allowed just 1 infield hit over 5 innings for the Aquasox in a dominating performance. He did not get the win in a scoreless game because a double in the top of the fifth skipped over the short wall down the right field line. Otherwise, a runner would have scored and Meyer would have been the pitcher of record. I met his father, Bob, sitting behind home plate last night. Bob would like a word with the stadium architect who designed that short wall, costing his boy the W. Meyer was a 7th-round pick in 2022 by Atlanta. His dad tells me there was no room for him in the starting rotation at the Atlanta High A affiliate in Rome, Georgia, so he was moved on to the Seattle Mariners system. He entered last night's game with an ERA in the mid-5s, but he hardly looked like a mid-5s pitcher. He was awesome. Wow. The ERA's down to 4.29 after that masterclass. His friends and ex-teammates so pumped up when he struck out his final batter of the night to end the 5th inning. So good on Adam and the Meyer family, and congrats to everybody in the local baseball community who helped Adam along his journey. Even the Seas had to tip their cap to the guy in the other dugout. Their game over tweet last night reading, "At least it was a kid from North Van who beat us." So fair play there to the Canadians. And Meyer's performance overshadowed another excellent turn from Johnny King of the Seas, the Jays' top pitching prospect. Went 5 innings, 3 hits. He struck out 8 on 69 pitches. His ERA is down to a minuscule 0.81. He's averaging more than 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he's doing all of this while being the youngest player in the Northwest League at age 19. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago. Blake, so long as he stays healthy and doesn't get traded, he will be pitching in Toronto one day. There is no doubting the talent that Johnny King has.
He won't be long at Nat Bailey at this rate. I mean, he's got Double-A this year, no? I know he's young.
As you know, they tend to baby and arms of this nature, right? So it is, workload is the thing.
Yeah.
But, and of course, his age. I mean, he's several years younger than the average age in the league. That's a consideration as well. But yeah, you do get to the point, like we saw with Savage and some others last year, where you just can't validate keeping them at the level if they're so dominant they're not being challenged. So yeah, it could very well be that you see a 19-year-old in Double-A later this year in the form of Johnny King, which would be Arjun is there at age 20, Blake Namala, who was just called up a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He's already 3 years younger than the average age in the Eastern League, the Double-A league, that New Hampshire is the next stop.
And remember, the Jays have seen both sides of this. Savage was the success story, but there's Manoah on the other side of the coin, right? Of a guy that escalated through and then busted out.
Yeah.
So they want to be careful.
The other difference is, Savage was a college guy. Johnny is less than 2 years removed from pitching high school baseball in Naples, Florida. So the step up in competition is massive, and he is still sparkling, just owning these hitters. So he's back at it tonight for First Responders Appreciation Night at the Nat. Nathan Perry and his 1.7 ERA on the mound. Seas have excellent pitching this year. If you enjoy watching pitching, get to the Nat, because these guys really know how to throw and set up hitters. Noon tomorrow, of course, the nooner. 1 p.m. starts Saturday, Sunday. I say nooner. The gates open at noon. First pitch is 1 o'clock. As Andy Dunn used to always say, we call it a nooner, but the game starts at 1 p.m. And yet it works as a promotion. What's the promotion?
One doesn't work.
Yeah. Andy used to get asked around, how do you guys do such great crowds? Well, so some of our promotions work. What's this nooner promotion? It's day baseball. Yeah, but what's the promotion? What's the giveaway? It's day baseball. That's all you have to do in Vancouver on a Friday afternoon, and people are happy to flock to the ballpark. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Blue Jays get a walk-off grand slam from Dalton Varsho to avoid the sweep and beat the Rays 5-3 in extras. It is just the 5th walk-off salami in the history of the ball club. It is the first since Steve Pearce hit 2 in a week back in 2018. 27.
Sorry,
Do you
who?
17. Steve Pierce. If I'm not, so he was he was a Pirates farmhand who came to the Blue Jays. Did he win a World Series MVP? He was very prominent. Yeah, the 2018 World Series MVP. He was mostly a spare part in his major league career, like a platoon first base left fielder type. But yeah, he for the Red Sox, he was World Series MVP. And I do sort of vaguely recall him being the talk of baseball that one week in July 2017 when he hit 2 walk-off salamis. But there they are. Those are the only 5 in club history going back to 1977.
Wow.
Mariners finally lost to Houston, but they can still take the 4-game series with the win today. Bryce Miller was in decent form upon his return from the injury list. 5 1/3, 2 runs, 9 base runners, struck out 3. Bigger news today, Cal Raleigh going on the IL with a right oblique strain. You could see him grimacing last night. Like, it was noticeable how affected he was by that oblique. And, of course, I'm sure that explains a fair bit of the 0 for 38 drought he was in. So this is the right call. You're hovering around the top of the division if you're Seattle. You need to shut your best player down here and get him healthy. So they'll have to do it without Raleigh making an even weak offense weaker. BC Lions training camp, where Xander Horvath, you remember him? He came on the scene last year and was just the thumper of beefy, burly running back breaking through tackles, and he is sharing first-team reps with our boy James Butler, who's back with the BC Lions at training camp. James has actually been in the studio here. He's a big podcast guy. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Butler's a veteran player. You really liked what you saw from Horvath last year. I could see a 2-headed monster at tailback for
Thunder
the
and
Leos
lightning
this year. Absolutely. Michael Couture of SFU amongst the starters who took some time on the sidelines yesterday, joining Dejan Allen, Stanley Berryhill, Gary Peters, who were already amongst guys taking some breathers during practice. Seven McGee, defensive back Lorondo Johnson, and offensive tackle Tyran Hunt are amongst the guys filling in with the ones. FanFest returns to Kamloops on Saturday, bringing a full day of football and community fun from the Lions. Fans can take part in the Dance and Play with the Pros. There's a celebrity flag football tournament, live entertainment, food, interactive experiences, and they'll be collecting donations in support of the Mount Paul Community Food Center through the Pure Later Tackle Hunger program, which has been a part of the CFL for years and years. Admission to the public is free. So if you're in Kamloops on Saturday, 1:30 start, join the Fan Fest with the Leos. Seahawks schedule release tonight. We know they'll open the season in a Super Bowl rematch with the New England Patriots on prime time Wednesday, September 9th at Lumen. That was leaked yesterday. Dave Softy Mahler of KJR saying 7 primetime games this year, 5 at home, 2 on the road. Of course, week 1 will be a primetime game. That Rams game on Christmas night is also confirmed. The 2 road trips will be at Denver in week 6 and week 15 at Philadelphia on a Saturday in December. And then you have the home games versus Kansas City on Sunday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football, and then the Bears and Cowboys on Monday Night Football. So bottom line is, if you're a season ticket holder of the Seahawks this year, more than half the time you're going at night, Blake, as opposed to a Sunday afternoon. This is what happens when you win the Super Bowl, right? You are in demand as a national entity, and suddenly you're going to evening football games as often as dayside football games.
Yeah, this is a reminder to Seahawks fans, season ticket holders, invest in a good coat for this upcoming season.
Yeah, exactly.
Chilly evenings are in your future.
Exactly. Bring your woolies, okay? You want to layer up, and they don't pay us, but just out of personal experience, are you familiar with the brand Rains? I believe it's a Vancouver brand. Raincoats. It's like a rubberized raincoat. It's absolutely glorious in terms of keeping the wet off. It just beads off and rolls off. Very warm, very dry. Well done, Rains. Results of yesterday's poll question. We asked you, will the Sedins and Ryan Johnston be able to change the Canucks culture? Yes or no? People said.
I think they said yes. I think they have faith.
They did. Percentage?
68.
75.
Mhm.
Here's the odd one. 75% voted yes. Virtually every comment, and I believe there was 30 some, was no. I think there was a lot of wishful voting going on here. And for those who voted no, most of them cited the presence of the owner. Voted no, the Sedins and RJ are also not the ones I'm concerned about. The culture still depends on the behavior of the owner. That's calling in planning. Minikas, they were all parts of the current culture. We saw a lot of that as well. Hector was an optimist who sounded up. He said, yes, but I don't think they have the stomach to trade away Petey. We talked about that yesterday, too. Would there be
We should
loyalties
refire
to
this poll
existing?
question tomorrow or something and just see how it's changed post press conference. See how their performance today altered the feeling.
Errors and omissions yesterday. Cam misspoke. It is Adam Valentini, who is the forward prospect at the University of Michigan, who made his way from the OHL. I believe he called him Ryan. I'm sure he knows a Ryan Valentini somewhere. Maybe there's a Ryan Valentini playing hockey.
I hate when that
Adam
happens. Like
Valentini.
a kid you went to grade school with.
It happens to me all the time.
All the time.
It happens to me all the time. Our former premier, Mr. Horgan, I knew a James Horgan. I'm sure I called him James Horgan on the air. I don't know how many times. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. Well, of course, except for today, we were later because of the news. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.